Hey, Life Group leaders, John Hand here. Okay, so this week we are talking about beauty. So I'm assuming you watched the message. The kind of the gist of this talk is that Jesus takes what is ugly and turns it into beauty, if we'll let him. That is the invitation of the cross. And in the message, and I'd be curious what it's like, to kind of talk about the difference between these two in Life Group. So we talk about, contrast the crucifixion with the cross. And the crucifixion is just the brutal facts that a man named Jesus was mutilated on a Roman torture device, and his body was broken and he died. But the cross, when we look at it has this mystique to it, right? And when we look at the crucifixion, we just see the brutal facts. But when we look at the cross, we don't see just the mutilation. We see so much more. When we look at the cross, we see the divine mercy of God. We see the sacrifice of love. We see incredible, intense mercy. There's so much that when we look at just the raw facts of a crucified, mutilated Jesus, that we don't see. If we were to take, we said in the talk, if we were to take a picture of the actual crucifixion, our reaction to it would be ugly. But when we look at the cross, we find this mysterious, compelling attraction. And that's a lens then that we can look at the rest of our life through. We can look at the hardship and the suffering in our life through the lens of the crucifixion, which is just mutilation and grotesque and dark to the point where we want to run away from it. Or we can look at the suffering in our life through the cross, which is that there's a beauty there, that there's a transformation that Jesus wants to do in our life, that we are not just stuck in the brutal crucifixion, but he's actually taking that ugly and transforming it into something of beauty. I talked in the talk about 3 groups in our church. Maybe there's 3 groups, represented in your life group. You could talk about this. We talked about the first group, who are people who have allowed the crucifixions in their life to become crosses, and they've become really beautiful people in their character. These are people who are the pillars of our church, probably the pillars of your life group. They exude a generosity and a beauty. They're the ones who are checking in on people. They're the ones who are telling their kind of failure stories. I talked about in the talk, failure stories are the best stories, right? Because knowing that somebody else failed, I'm not the only one, it gives me hope. And these are people who are tender and generous, and they're kind, and they're incredibly patient. Why? Because they've allowed, often the most generous, the most beautiful are people who have suffered the most. And they've allowed that suffering to become a cross and for it to be turned into beauty in their life. And then we kind of have this middle group that's very much in the crucifixion. They just feel the pain of it, and they're armoring up maybe, or being cynical or jaded or angry, and they're just in the middle of pain, and it hurts, and they want to believe that there's a cross that's possible, but you have a hard time getting there. You're not able to get there to believe that somehow beauty could come from this. And the challenge to you is don't run from this. Don't armor up. Don't go drown yourself in a distraction. I'm not saying that pain is, wonderful, but I am saying it's producing something beautiful if the cross has anything to say about it in your life, in our lives, and in our faith. And so, can you trust that beauty is there, and can you let that become a prayer for you? If the beauty is there, God, help me find it. If the beauty is there, would you bring it out? If the light of Christ can shine in my heart, can the cracks that I'm experiencing allow it to come out? I talked in the talk about the difference between being broken down and being broken open. I beg you to please let this break you open and not break you down. And then there's the third group. This third group's probably newer to faith. This possibility that we could actually, experience beauty in the pain of life, in the crucifixion, that there's a cross in there somewhere, is probably maybe a new idea. And for that group, I took the picture of the starry night. Do you remember that? And when we look just at a night sky, all we see is random white lights kind of sprinkled about. But when you look at Starry Night, the painting, you see this wonder, right? And it captivates us. And then when you go back to look at the night sky through the lens of the starry night, just not the reality of faint lights in the sky, but of the starry night, you start to see something totally different. And that's the difference between just seeing what's there versus seeing through the eyes of faith. Like an artist sees so much more because there is so much more. And that's the opportunity and the invitation for you is, could you hold out the hope of the miraculous possibility that there is so much more, there is a beauty that could come through this situation for you if you will only see it, or if you will only try to invite the eyes of faith to see it. And that passage says, outwardly we're wasting away, but inwardly we're being renewed day by day. So it says, can you put your trust not in what is seen, but what is unseen? And that's really the invitation for all of us. And then I ended with this prayer, and I'll end this with this prayer. And this prayer is really meant to give words and language to the possibility that there's more under the surface than I see right now. So here's the prayer. I close. Today, I choose softness over cynicism. I choose compassion over anger. I choose prayer over blame. I choose wisdom over despair. I choose to look for the beautiful face of Christ. May that be so.